What's going on, guys? We are here to talk about monetary MVPs and how the EWC, I think, honestly, MVP should not be worth that much. At the EWC, Jorius was the MVP winner, winning $50,000, which is unheard of, especially with a prize pool of only $500,000. He gets 10% by himself. Jorius, he came out to the Chiefs, made an OCE team finally get a top 8 result that they haven't had in 4+ years. But then fell in the quarterfinals against G2, only scoring 2 goals the entire time. Personally, I wouldn't have picked Jorius. I would have picked Exotic on BDS. He was actually doing very, very well. I don't have any numbers to back this up right now. I don't think there's any person keeping track of stats, at least on the public side. So I don't have any numbers necessarily to try and back it up that way. But let's talk about this. We'll talk about the prize pool. First, we'll talk about the monetary gains of an MVP and why I don't like it. And then we'll get into maybe some highlights as I talk about the overarching picture. So first, let's go over to the prize pool. Here's what the prize pool was. Basically, $50,000 for Jorius. He made more money than literally every player here outside of the BDS roster. And he was only 10K short of that. BDS's roster, obviously, he was a top-heavy first-place prize pool. Normally, our first place is not more than double of the other Grand Finals attendee. But for this one, it was. BDS will walk away with slightly more money. Jorius works away with 56,667, repeating, of course, amount of money, which is a very, very good sum for a team that came in 5th, 8th, and scored 2 goals in the quarterfinals. I understand the history that's behind it. He obviously comes into an OC team, turns the Chiefs from a last place finish at the major to a top 8 finish. There's a couple things I want to bring up that the reason why I wouldn't have voted for him necessarily for MVP. I assume MVP voting as well was a talent / administration vote. So that's usually how MVPs work. So the Chiefs, for a couple of reasons why I wouldn't give it to him. One, yes, I get it. A history is made. He comes onto this team, turns Chiefs into a top 8 team. I think there's 2 reasons why I wouldn't do it. One, there's a little bit of a flaw in GSL formats. I personally do not like these formats at all. I don't understand why they don't just do groups of 8, especially when the scheduling did not matter. It's not like you're only going to have Group D on one day and they're only playing on one day and they don't have to show up the other days. Everyone's showing up on every single day. So if you have groups of 8, you don't get these rematches, right? As we can see here, how many rematches did we have? BDS versus Power, rematch. Gen G versus Team Secret, rematch. Fury versus Twist Minds was not a rematch. It's one of the few ones that we did not get. And then a rematch here. 3 out of the 4 were rematches. 3 out of 4, the rematch was won again by the same team, which is good, but it just makes the first round matchup kind of obsolete. It really just does not matter at all. So if you do an 8-team bracket, basically these lower bracket finals would be mix and matching from the 2 groups, and you would never have any rematches, which would work out better. So that's one flaw on it, because Jorius basically only beat 1 team this entire tournament. Obviously, Gentlemates are a very good team. They have shown that they're very good before, but I think when you only take down 1 team, there's obviously going to be some you did great versus some the other team did poorly, right? And if you're only beating 1 team, you're definitely going to have an argument on both those sides. Like if you beat varying teams, then I think that changes, right? Then it's like, no, it's more because you just did great. I'm not taking away anything from Jorius. Came in, no practice time with the Chiefs. It's a great story. Fantastic. If there was no monetary gain on the MVP, then I possibly could have gave it to him. But really quick, the main reason why I wouldn't is they didn't even win a quarterfinal match. They scored 2 goals in their quarterfinal game. Not only that, they lost to G2, who didn't even make it to the finals. I get G2 beat BDS earlier in the tournament, but in terms of playoff bracket, honestly, they had one of the weaker opponents. So I don't know. I think they got it wrong. We'll put up highlights here real quick, and so you can see some of the action. We're going into the next game here. I can probably skip ahead a little bit. Let's go here. So Jorius scores right away. Now, like again, I am not trying to take away any credit from a Jorius. Oh, that these are just highlights from the last match. Obviously performed exceptionally well. Chiefs, great story. First OC top 8 in a long time. I think it was just the main thing is not winning a quarterfinal game. Like, if there's no monetary value on MVP, which I believe there should never be monetary value on these awards because they're so, like, subjective, and also it's a team game, the team wins, yada, yada, yada. Then I don't mind when we get a little loosey-goosey on our MVPs. Very rarely does an MVP, at least in Rocket League terms, not come from the winning team. And I think there's relatively good reason for that. Your value is you won the tournament, right? Like the Chiefs, obviously, there was value. They had last at the last major. They made top 8. Lots of value on a Jorius. BDS, though, you could say there was tons of value with Exotic. It's the same roster, so obviously it's a little bit harder to pinpoint. But BDS came from the worst playoff loss in the history of RLCS, where they kept choking in quarterfinals, to winning the entire tournament. And a lot of that was off the back of how well Exotic played. When you have a roster change, it's a lot easier to give an MVP to the person that just joins a team because, like, on paper, their value is there. Obviously, on the field, we saw the value as well with Jorius, but again, 0 quarterfinal game wins, only scored 2 goals in the entire quarterfinals, and the team that beat them didn't even make the finals. I think it's a stretch to give the MVP to a player like that. We've had some MVPs before where they're not a final winner. I think it was Jay Naps in one of the Dream Hacks where I believe he lost in the grand finals. I can see MVPs happening in teams that lose in the grand finals. I think that is very, that is fine. Like, if that player really is popping off. Even a top 4 finish, I could see it. When there's a monetary value on the MVP, though, I feel like it almost always should go to the winning team unless there's something insane, right? And I think the only way you get that insanity is if that player is popping off all playoffs long. In the grand finals, even pops off, maybe 2 goals per game, but his team just kind of lets him down, right? Exotic performed exceptionally throughout the whole tournament. I guess the one flaw on BDS was they did lose in group stage 3-0 to G2. And I guess that's a counter argument against the Chiefs losing 4-0 to G2. But we all know, as viewers of Rocket League, playoffs are a different beast from group play. Group play is there to just make it out. Just make the dance and then perform on the playoff days, right? So I think Exotic, I'd be a little tilted if I was Exotic personally. Jorius, massive congrats to him. It was an awesome run to see. But again, with the monetary value, I think it's just hard to pick a player that loses in the quarterfinals that doesn't even win a game. I'm not even sure if he scored a goal in that game. I assume he did, but I didn't go back and check. It's just odd. On top of that, though, I think we could fix the whole MVP talks with just not having monetary value to it. Then I wouldn't mind a Jorius pick. I'm like, oh, that's cute, but that's a fun story. We want to highlight that story, right? And that's fine to give an MVP to something that you want to highlight when there's no monetary value to it. Maybe he gets a medal or something like that. That's fine. I don't mind that. But once there's like a large sum of money where he literally made more money than any player on the Falcons by a lot. I think it was what? I think the Falcons players made like 26K-ish. And Jorius made 56. So he more than doubled any of the Falcons players. Like, that's just absurd to have the MVP worth that much. So I think that's the first flaw in the whole thing. And poor Beast Mode as well. He won Gamers 8 last year. He got the MVP. The MVP that year was only 10K, I think. And that MVP, obviously, usually you can find that MVP a little bit more. With the Gamers 8 format, with the crew battle format, I think maybe there is some value to it because people play different amount of games. And Beast Mode obviously earned that there. But the year before that, I believe the MVP was another $50,000. So Beast Mode just wrong place, wrong time. Just winning at the wrong time there to get a large sum of money. But yeah, hats off to Jorius. Hats off to the Chiefs taking down Gentlemates. Was really fun to watch. But yeah, I think just for MVP talks, I think I would have went with Exotic. How do you guys feel? In the comments below, let me know if you would have went with Exotic. Would you have went with Jorius? Would you went with some different player? Maybe a Falcons player, maybe a TRK, maybe a different BDS player. Let me know in the comments. And thank you guys for watching, and we'll be back with more videos later in the week. Bye-bye.